A friend of mine was telling me that she works two jobs for a total working week of around 60 hours. All my friends who live in the city work two or three jobs just to make rent, and in many ways, I'm not even immune to the trap of wanting to monetize all my hobbies. It's just the way it is right now, I guess. Cost of living continues to rise, housing costs have doubled or tripled in the last 10 years. While some things in my area have gone down, fuel for my car being one of them, the general trend continues upward as survival costs more and more. I wondered if there was a better way to do this, and for me, that was intergenerational living, aka living with my parents despite being a grown adult. If you've followed my channel for a while, you likely know that I live on the property with my parents. We don't live under the same roof, and instead, I live in a tiny house that I built on their land. I moved here because my life in the city just sort of fell apart on me. It started with a job loss and, in turn, losing the house that I'd been trying to buy. In addition, members of my family had been moving away from the city in the years prior, including my mom and my biological dad. I figured that there was no better time to make the jump to moving to the forest, which is something I'd wanted my whole life anyway. And I do not regret. I know that it's a fantasy of internet homesteaders or tiny house goers that moving to the country means quitting your job and living a relaxing life. I think that some who live in the country may tell you that for most folks it isn't quite right. I work a lot more here than I ever did in the city, but the nature of that work has changed. I tell my friends that the easiest life is to work a job or, maybe two, rent an apartment, and outsource everything else. In the city, a typical day might go something like this. I would wake up, pick up coffee and breakfast at my local coffee shop, or, tea rather for me, because I'm a tea drinker. Go to work, come home, order food from Uber Eats, and relax until I have to wake up and do it all again the next day. And I know not everyone gets coffee from Starbucks every day, and not everyone orders from Uber Eats every day, but my point is that in the city, you outsource most things. You have the ability to order food to your doorstep if you don't feel like cooking. The heat for your home is turned on by the press of a button. In exchange for all of this convenience, we pay in cash, which is earned by exchanging our time. Conversely, my day on the property goes a little something like this. Wake up, light the wood stove, and chop firewood if I didn't do it the night before. Tend to the wood stove while I eat breakfast, make tea, relax, go to work, come home, visit with my family, make dinner, then do nighttime homestead chores, which may include firewood, tending to the chickens, other maintenance, and so forth. It isn't that I work any less than I did in the city. In fact, I work more out here, but the nature of my work has changed. I still work a full-time day job, but instead of my second job being work that I do for someone else, it's work that I do for myself and my family. Living here allows me to outsource less to save money. The biggest area I save money is on heating costs. Rather than working a second job to pay for my heat from the utility company, I gather, split, and stack firewood and maintain a fire in my wood stove to keep me warm. I also do save a lot on food, to a lesser extent just because of the fact I'm unable to order it. Uber Eats and other delivery services just aren't out here. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without intergenerational living. Even though I save money in these ways, it's my parents who have taken the majority of the financial burden for now. Some articles I've read about intergenerational living have said that it's the younger generation that benefits the most financially from living with their parents or grandparents, at least initially. And I would say that that's true. My mom bore the brunt of the costs for me, including, she pays the mortgage on the property, she paid for the well to be dug, she paid to bring power on the property, and so forth. I do pay rent each month, and I am in a position to help pay for any surprise expenses we may encounter. I'm also able to go halfers on products that we may all want together. For example, my parents' wood stove burns a lot more firewood than mine, and they would like an electric log splitter next year. But overall, I would say that I benefit more financially for now. I expect this tables may turn a bit as my parents age, but we'll get there when we get there. So, what do I do on the property? Well, I provide companionship to my parents. I'm less of a financial safety net for them, but more of a social safety net. I provide them with security of simply being here. When my stepfather was having his health issues, my mom knew that if she needed to be away from the property for any length of time, that I'd be here to take care of the dogs, the chickens, and the rest of the property. I also provide a lifeline to the community. Since I work full time in my immediate community, I have connections to people that they just don't. If my mom needs to hire someone or sell some extra eggs and so forth, contacting those people often falls onto me. I consider it part of my responsibility to take care of them later in life. And while I may not have the financial resources to support them in a considerable way, part of my job now is to save a good portion of my income, either for my own retirement or to help them later. And I know that no one is obligated to help their parents. I also know that my parents would never hold me to making such promises, but I have the opportunity to save money now, and I may as well store some cash away for a rainy day. Last week, I had to be on the property by myself, and it was pretty lonely. I got to thinking about how lonely it can be out here. It's pitch dark, for one thing. That can make it seem lonely. I can't see my neighbors when it's dark. I mean, I can't see them anyway, but the darkness makes it feel like you're the only one around. Ultimately, I'm less lonely here than I was in the city. I lived with my long-term partner in the city, but even then, it felt like everyone was living their own lives, and they are. I know everyone has their own life to live, but the city feels lonely sometimes. Here at my family and community, each time I go into the grocery store, I get an update on how everyone is doing. I care about the people around me, and I feel like they genuinely care about me. I don't feel the need to go out or, date or meet someone because my social life has improved dramatically, which is kind of funny because you'd think that living in a smaller place would shrink your social circle, but it had the opposite effect for me. As the cost of living in Canada shows no sign of slowing down, maybe intergenerational or multi-generational households will become the norm. I know that in many places in Canada, including my area, it already is. Most people my age ask me how I'm able to live here. Most people who do live with family. Those who do not live with family have a much higher than average paying jobs. I said last year it was the cool thing for the kids to do when a friend of mine said that she had no choice but to move into her late grandmother's house and rent it from her mother when she went through a breakup. I know that not everyone is able to live with their families for a myriad of reasons, but I also think that living in our silos that capitalism wants us to exist in isn't for our own best interests either. Living with my family has changed my relationship with work, as I no longer feel like I am working just for the man, so to speak, and instead also dedicate a considerable amount of time working for my family.